Welcome, this is Charlie from CIC News for You with a continuation of a sensitive topic, the 1619 Project, and that is the content being promoted as history to our kids in K through 12 by none other than the New York Times and the leader of the project, Nikole Hannah-Jones. What is scary is that this information is actively being pushed into our public schools as an effort to reframe our history with opinions, inaccurate facts, and no accountability or context of the times. And this is being done purposely, which has been publicly stated by the lead, Nikole, with support from the New York Times. My goal is to provide you the background of this project and to review the author's credentials that are now the so-called new historians for our history. I want to start with a positive statement that I am amazed at what I have learned from this material, and I have absolutely no issues with providing the truth of our history, even if it is hurtful. We all know the truth hurts sometimes. However, I do have a problem with this material being taught in K through 12, with the purposeful intent to provide only a one-sided narrative to reframe our history. What makes this even more concerning is that the majority of this information is coming from journalists, not historians. And what is provided by historians is a combination of facts, ideology, and opinions. What is outrageous, in my opinion, is that this project is intentionally trying to make our children feel guilty about our past with an end game goal of reparations legislation. In my opinion, you can decide what you believe as you process the information I will cover, which includes a review of the recommended content to include essays, creative content, and more. Just so you know, this project is quite extensive, as you will see, so I will let you know upfront that there will be a part 3, because there is way too much detail to cover in this video. Before we start, let me state that you always need to keep in mind the audience for this project. The project is aimed at our kids in K through 12. Our kids, not adults that have formulated their opinions. This is an attempt to mold our kids into seeing only one part of the world, intentionally from a one-sided view. That is wrong, but you decide as you process the material. To start, I want to present a very recent New York Times Magazine article from Nikole Hannah-Jones that highlights her hidden agenda on getting legislation passed on reparations. I guess since this is a recent article, her goal is no longer hidden. This piece by Nikole shows her true intent for the 1619 Project. We already know from her past comments that she is using guilt as part of her effort, which is fine when directed at me or other adults. I do not find this appropriate, though, for K through 12. We already allow our children to be brainwashed in colleges that have a 13-to-1 ratio of liberal to conservative professors. But using this tactic in K through 12 is completely wrong. What makes this project dangerous is that the New York Times, Nikole, and the Pulitzer Center have set up the curriculum for teachers and lays out the road for teaching a one-sided narrative with many opinions that children will not be able to decide if it's true or not. I do not trust many of our teachers to do the research or to provide any teaching beyond what is included. Therefore, our kids will not get the truth, the whole truth, but a biased view of a group of journalists with a smattering of facts. Our kids already have many emotional problems, and to intentionally spread guilt is wrong. We already know the majority of public education teachers are liberal and will not have issues promoting this narrative as facts to our kids. This is a travesty and needs to be stopped, in my opinion. One area I am not clear on is how will this be taught to our children? Is it a 1/2 year of intensive lessons to reframe our history? Is it a continuous effort to use this project to replace history? Just how will this be provided to kids? I am researching this, but I have no answers yet. Maybe I'll have that by part 3. Not knowing this should concern you, or maybe I'm just in the dark. Let me know if you have details on how this material is being presented in schools. It would be good to know. Remember, this project has already been pushed out district-wide in schools in Chicago, Washington, D.C., Wilmington, Delaware, and Winston-Salem, North Carolina. Were you aware? You are now. Did you know that the primary author and director of this project, Nicole, has stated in her essay that no people has a greater claim to that flag than us, referencing our flag and Black Americans? While I agree Black Americans have made significant contributions to our country, this statement is biased and without facts and is provided without alternative views. This project is about Black history with no context or perspective. The few objections from history professors before the release of this project were ignored by the New York Times and Nicole, and they went on and published known facts that were incorrect. That should tell you something. The overall material is good, but for college level students that can question the sources and opinions. But this material as published is not for all grades K through 12. Our kids in these grades do not yet know enough to question some of the material, and I assume they will take it as fact. That is wrong. But without context or alternative views, what would you expect? Wow, is all I have to say. Be prepared to agree or counter this statement by Nicole, as I am sure your kids will bring this home with a feeling of guilt or shame. That is just what Nicole wants. Wow, and amazing. And where is the media or college professors of history? They stood up for a short period of time, but where are they now that this is being rolled out? Peer pressure on liberals at this time prevents a lot of counterpoints to the cancel PC culture we live in, and that should concern everyone. Okay, let us review how this project is laid out on Pulitzer.com/1619, which is set up specifically for public educators. The site is great, as I stated in my first video, and the material is wide-ranging with questions, suggested readings, and so many other resources. I actually love this site. I love the material, and I am learning day by day so much about African history. I am 60 plus years old, and so much of this was not available when I was in school or college for my bachelor's or master's degree. I welcome this opportunity to learn new information. I've been around for over 6 decades and know how to decipher opinions and narratives from facts. But I am against forcing these opinions and narratives on our kids that are very moldable during the first 2 decades of their life. It is outrageous that Nicole and the New York Times are using our kids as pawns, in my opinion. Be concerned. I am. As you can see, the layout of the 1619 project is pretty straightforward and is located on Pulitzer.com/1619. There are 9 areas that all have more information as you drill down on the website. There's quite a bit of material with lots of interesting information. I will start with the first 2 areas, the reading guide and the index of terms and historical events, which is recommended for all grades, K through 12. Personally, I don't agree with that, as you will see. The other areas include lesson plans, activities, analyze and discuss, exploring, evaluating, sharing, and connecting. I'll cover all of these in part 3 of the video. Okay, as I said, these 2 areas are pointed out for all grades, K through 12. Just like in my first video, make sure you always keep the audience in mind. That is important. I started with the 1619 reading guide, quotes, key terms, and questions. There are 18 recommended essays for this project, and you can see I've included the list of the essays, author, and the author's title based on the best information I could find, but may have changed given the mobile nature of journalists, professors, and others. To understand the sources of the content of this material, I broke up the essays by the author's job role, with the results displayed in the pie chart at the top of the page. The first thing I noticed is the lack of professors in the field of history, and what seems to be an abundance of journalists, with many from none other than the New York Times. I find this interesting since this project is a major effort to reframe our history, but yet over a third of the input comes from journalists. Another third of the input is from actual history professors, but from published articles, not textbooks. Throw in a professor from sociology, a couple of law professors, an activist lawyer, and a curator, and you have the makeup of the group trying to reframe our history. I find that rather out of sorts and very concerning. It seems to me if you are trying to reframe American history, you would go to the experts in the field. I don't see that from this project, which is a selective pick of individuals along for the ride and cause of Nicole and the New York Times, in my opinion. Let's not make any rash judgments yet because we have a lot of content to view. So let's continue and cover the creative content that is included with this project. Notice that each of these pieces are classified as poems or fiction. Just to be clear, I looked up the definition of fiction. Fiction is defined as literature in the form of prose, especially short stories and novels that describes imaginary events and people. It also says invention or fabrication as opposed to fact, or a belief or statement that is false but that is often held to be true because it is expedient to do so. I have no issues with this creative material since it is being called fiction, but I have a major concern of how this material will be presented to K through 12, whether this will be presented as facts by educators simply following the lead of Nicole and the New York Times, and that should concern you as well. Once again, I don't understand why the New York Times is creating a curriculum for our K through 12 schools. That seems way out of sorts to me. Since I'm not an educator, I'm not sure if this is common or not. But I don't seem to recall the news media setting any curriculum that I was taught. The inclusion of articles from various sources is always nice to supplement the core curriculum. But if the New York Times is trying to replace curriculum with the 1619, I have a major concern, and I hope you do as well. Maybe I'm off base on this, but that is how I feel. To continue, I think a lot of this material is really good and contains a lot of information that I was not aware of, and there are some great poems included as well. But how will this material be presented to our kids in K through 12? That is my concern, especially since Nicole has publicly stated she wants to promote guilt to our kids in support of her reparations efforts. Using our kids as pawns in a political effort is wrong, and I object to this methodology. This project would generally be okay if the context of the times was included, as well as many significant events by Black leaders and abolitionists that, for some reason, were not included. They were purposely left out, and I'm not sure why. To promote that our country started in 1619 is an opinion, but you would not know it from this project, which is trying to state it as fact. Even some of the stated facts are wrong, and I covered those in part 1. This project is an attempt to brainwash our kids into believing opinions, in my opinion. Peddling opinions as facts is wrong. I went to Wiki to research propaganda using children, and guess what was the first thing to pop up? A reference to the Nazi Party that directed propaganda in Nazi Germany between the 1920s and 1945 to influence the values and beliefs of the future generation. This is a harsh statement, and I'll probably get a lot of negative comments from the left on this, but realize it is true. Force feed the children to achieve your future goals. Just do a simple Google search on the use of kids for propaganda, and you will see many examples of children being used for political objectives and indoctrination. And while this project has facts, it also contains disputed facts from expert sources, as well as many opinions without identification as such. This is not for our kids, in my opinion. Once again, let me state that I am learning a lot, but I have been around for a while and I know how to research and decide if the information is fact or fiction. But what about our kids who are formulating opinions and learning new facts each day? Throw this information in without context and the kids will believe this is fact. And in my opinion, that is exactly what Nicole and the New York Times intend. And that is horrible. Once again, to set a baseline on who is reframing our history, I reviewed the list of the authors that are referenced in the list of terms and historical events that are cited in this project. As you can see, the project has a wide range of content in many subject areas with references to specifics in the published articles. This is rather concerning given that references by job role shows that well over 50% of the information comes from journalists and only 22% from professors of history. That seems like this project could be rather biased in my opinion. How clear are facts from narratives and opinions? I don't think it is clear at all, and our children will certainly not be able to tell the difference, and I don't believe that many teachers will know the differences as well, and they will simply support the narrative of Nicole and the New York Times. In my opinion, this is not good. On this slide, you will see some information that I extracted from the 1619 project. Now remember, the audience is K through 12. These extracts from the project do not seem to me to be appropriate for K through 12. The younger kids will not have a clue and will be confused if this is taught as fact. And even the older kids have not been around long enough to understand a lot of this material. But understanding is not the goal. It is to reframe our history on opinions and in some cases, as I pointed out, false facts. I am concerned that in the K through 12 grades that these poems and fiction will be presented as facts, and that would be wrong. I believe there will be many teachers that will believe and teach this as fact, without context or alternative views. This should concern you. I'll state once again, the information is intriguing and I've learned a lot, but this cannot be taught as facts to our children. Where is the context? Where are alternative views? What if someone wanted to promote socialism history as a single-sided view in K through 12? Would that be acceptable? Where is the information on the start of slavery? And who were the first to do this? I have my opinions, but it would be nice to know the origins of slavery, given this is a project on slavery. How convenient to publish a narrow view with poems, opinions, and fiction, and try to pass it off as facts to reframe our history. The material is good, but this method of dissemination is an attempt to infiltrate our public education system to get at our kids. So inappropriate. Notice a statement by Professor of Sociology, Desmond Matthew. Is this fact or is this his opinion? Based on contradictions from many of his peers, this seems to be a misdirected, or at a minimum, is a one-sided view with no alternative views for our kids. Now look at the comment from Taya, which is interesting and a fact I did not know, that a Black person is responsible for the pecan pralines cultivation process. That should be taught, but I'm not sure that it should be taught in a single narrow view of the 1619 project. It should be incorporated with other historic events. What about the article from Kevin Cruz that makes an argument that the traffic jams throughout our country are originated by racism? If so, open this essay to all facts and context so it can be validated and recognized as part of history, not just a narrative by this one historian. I'd like more information on this, but isn't this the same as all the gerrymandering our politicians have done over years to get elected by separating districts? And this was done by the left and right and is wrong. There is a lot to this piece, and the information should be analyzed and publicly added to the curriculum at the appropriate levels. But to force this single view on K through 12 is not appropriate, in my opinion. Look at the snippet from Harvard Professor Muhammad with the headline that sugar-fueled slavery. While this is interesting, it is a one-sided view from a professor without alternatives or a total narrative. Again, this is a good piece for college-level kids to discuss with context available. To put a perspective on this material, I've put together an analysis of the authors promoted by the 1619 Project. My findings show absolutely bias on information sources for this project, with much coming from journalists and their opinions. And even the professors that are included are opinion pieces scattered with facts without alternative views. The content is good, as I have stated, but again, this is not for K through 12, which is the intended audience. Be aware of what Nicole in the New York Times is trying to push on kids in K through 12. This should not be allowed to stand without historical perspective and validation of facts and ideologies by others. This effort is aimed at our kids, and we cannot let it stand as is. Once again, I want to emphasize that the material is great, and the unvarnished truth needs to be told, but not with a bunch of opinionated essays, poems, and fiction that will confuse facts with fiction and opinions. To keep it unvarnished, we need to present the facts, unvarnished by these authors that have created what seems to be a single focused view in an essay, not a history book. This type of information needs to be incorporated into textbooks where it is missing, but do not treat this as a reframing of our history, because it simply is not. Look at the great information on this page, all of which should be incorporated into our history books. And it might even be there, I'm not sure. Even in a special section, this could be included on Black history, and that would be appropriate. But the 1619 Project should not replace our history as they are trying to do, or reframe our history. How about we update our history with the unvarnished truth? That is what I would like to see. As I wrap up this video, I leave you with a piece I found from San Diego State University on the propaganda in children's literature. Now, before I go on, let me say that I'm not stating that the 1619 Project is total propaganda, but I believe a lot of it is filled with ideology and opinions with an end goal of using our kids as a means to reach a goal, unrelated to teaching our kids. And think about what I've covered so far. Do you think our kids will be able to separate fact from fiction? I don't. And therefore, the 1619 Project is not for K through 12, in my opinion. You make up your own mind. I'm just providing what I could find intermixed with my opinions. I will be doing a part 3 since there is so much material to review. Look for the video coming soon. I couldn't pass up doing a bit more research on the actual history professors that contributed to this project, which you see on this slide. You can read the details as I quickly summarize my thoughts. It seems like a few of the limited history professors used for this project are contributors to opinion and op-ed pieces for the New York Times. So just how much of what they provided for this project was opinion or op-ed versus facts? Or how much was the ideology of the professor? And yet they want to promote this to K through 12? I don't think that is appropriate. College, maybe. While I am still going to do a part 3, I personally believe this material should not be promoted in K through 12 unless it is restructured, fact-checked, and provides context along with other views. I hope I have provided you with researched information that will help you understand the 1619 Project. Thanks for watching this video, and I hope you learned some Black History facts as I did. I am looking forward to doing part 3 for you as well as for myself. I thank you so much for watching and supporting CIC News for You. Be safe, be informed, and stay informed with CIC News for You. Signing off, Charlie.